Well, let's bring in the former ambassador to Libya and Jordan, Peter Millett. Peter, I was going to start by asking you your thoughts with regards to the progress of ceasefire talks. But over the course of the last 90 minutes or so, we've potentially seen this go in a very different direction.
Yes, over the weekend, all the talk was about the negotiations for a deal to release hostages and to have either a pause or a ceasefire. But it does seem to be going in a different direction. And it's going in a very negative direction, because the idea that the people in Rafah who are already living in tents can move somewhere safe is a bit of a fantasy. I mean, the whole of Gaza has been obliterated. There are no safe spaces anymore. And I think we'll see more destruction and more deaths of innocent people. It's not the way to release the hostages, and it's not the way to save a very difficult situation.
You mentioned there about people in tents already having to move. I was reading one report of a journalist, a Gazan journalist, who'd, I think, moved 4 or 5 times throughout the course of the conflict since early October. With regards to the Israelis trying to square this circle of Benjamin Netanyahu trying to pursue his stated aims of eradicating Hamas, if that is even possible, and also trying to secure the release of the remaining hostages, of which there are several dozens, how does this play into any negotiation with Hamas? Because surely if you are Hamas, you're going to say, well, we're not going to pursue a ceasefire if you're about to continue the conflict in Rafah.
I think the leadership of both sides does not have the best interests of its people at heart. Netanyahu, I believe, does not want a ceasefire. He does not want a deal, because he knows that as soon as there is either a ceasefire or a pause, there will be massive pressure for elections. He will lose those elections, and the corruption charges against him will be renewed. He wants to hang on to his position. He's been very good at it for more than 20 years, and that is his main objective, not the release of the hostages or the best interests of Israel. And it's the same for the Hamas leadership. At the moment, they can show that they're winning, that they have resisted Israel. They are the group who can protect the best interests of the Palestinian people. That's wrong. They're not protecting the best interests of the Palestinian people. But I think both leaderships are resisting a deal because they feel that that's the best way to protect their own personal interests rather than the interests of their people.
But at some point, the political pressure internally, internationally, alongside the domestic pressure, will surely draw some change in the stances of both sides? Or do you think they can remain impervious to that pressure for even longer than they have already?
No, I think the patience of the international community, particularly the patience in Washington and in Europe, also in Cairo and in Doha, I think the Americans can play a huge role in deploying their real leverage. They are the ones who are providing the money and the arms to Israel. They can exert their influence even more. And I think that is what is happening behind the scenes. Similarly, the Egyptians and the Qataris have significant leverage. I hope that they are using that leverage behind the scenes. If that is the case, then some sort of temporary deal might be on the cards. But Hamas was ramping up the stakes last night by attacking Karim Shalom. The signs that the leadership are actually willing to compromise are not positive, I'm afraid.
And Peter, you mentioned the Qataris there for a second. Just briefly, obviously these reports now that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli government, has banned, temporarily at least, the broadcasts of Al Jazeera in the in Israel. What do you make of that?
The Israeli leadership does not like free and open journalists. I mean, the only journalists on the ground in Gaza are the Palestinians themselves. In any other conflict, you would have yourselves, Sky, CNN, BBC, and all these others, focusing on the detail and focusing on the tragedy that has happened in Gaza. The Israeli leadership and the IDF do not like criticism. I think it's one of the major weaknesses that we're seeing in Gaza is the lack of open and free journalism in Gaza, putting the spotlight on the tragedy and the killing of innocent civilians and the humanitarian disaster and tragedy which is taking place there.
Peter Millett, former ambassador to Libya and Jordan. We really appreciate your time and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.